Am I the asshole for losing it and calling my father a weak, pathetic man in front of his family? My father has always been against any confrontation or arguments. He is extremely passive, refuses to stand up for himself, and avoids any conflict. If someone isn't paying attention while walking and bumps into him, he insists it's his own fault. If his employer would mess up his salary, he wouldn't bother fixing it. If a mechanic didn't properly repair his car, he would just accept it as is. This unfortunately resulted in a tumultuous childhood with my insanely narcissistic mother. She controlled his every move. She got him to quit his job and be a locked and stay-at-home dad. She had him do every chore. She insulted him at every step. She cheated on him relentlessly and even brought APs into our home. She enjoyed making his life miserable every day, and he never questioned it. My extended family, God bless them, were there for me so many times as much as they could be. They tried for years to make my father leave, but he never budged. When she would direct her anger onto myself, in the form of screaming, insulting, or general demeaning, my father never once found the guts to stand up for me or support me. When I was a kid, if I cried to Dad about something Mom did or said to me, he would sweep it under the rug or just insist I forget about it. Hell, he would even try and justify it. As I grew older, it really set in for me how messed up this was. My mother gladly kicked me out of the house when I was 18, and my father just sat there and looked sullen. Didn't say a damn thing. I joined the Air Force almost immediately and got stationed on the other side of the country. The dynamic was awful, and I could have easily gone down the incel route if not for therapy and the amazing people I met along the way. It took years for me to get in a better mental space. I was filled with hatred. My mother left my father 2 years after I got stationed and utterly destroyed my father in the divorce. She was killed a year later in a DUI with one of her APs. I took a lot of joy in hearing that it took her hours to die, and that's when I really knew I needed help to process things. I'm almost 30 now, have a girlfriend who is perhaps the best thing to ever happen in my life, and fully understands the situation with my family. I have learned to not allow myself to be consumed with anger and resentment by my past. Or so I thought, you'll see, and instead put that energy to my future. I have been extraordinarily low contact / near no contact with my father since I left. As much as I try, I cannot make that connection with him. I recently went to a family reunion and brought my girlfriend with me. My father was there as it was his side of the family. They have many issues with him, but he is family, so whatever I guess. I made sure to avoid him. I was chatting with my uncles when I heard my father talk in the background. He was discussing how a co-worker of his was going through a divorce as he discovered his wife was having an affair and was positioned to have a very favorable divorce on his side. My father remarked how his co-worker should work instead to forgive his wife and, by his own words, set a good example for unity and forgiveness, and how he believed he set a great example for me in that extent. I swear it was like a switch went off in my head, and I was mentally back to being the rage-filled 18-year-old. All these years, and he never learned a damn thing. I turned to him and asked if he was fucking serious. He looked at me and started to stutter. I know the next minute was pure word vomit, and I can't relay it perfectly, but to sum it up, I shouted how he was a pathetic father, pathetic man. His family all know he's a disgrace of a human being who would rather his son be treated like shit than defend him because he's a fucking coward. No one would ever see him as an example to live by. His wife would rather fuck half the neighborhood than even touch him, and he should never ever believe anyone respects him. I began to derail and ramble between my shouting, and my girlfriend quickly took me out and drove me home. It was insane just how quickly being away from him made me feel better. She just held me when we got back and told me it's okay. Again, best thing to ever happen to me. I was ashamed of how I lost it and am now going to resume my therapy. That's a given. However, I'm glad I finally unloaded AITAH always needed to be said onto him. Extended family is pretty mixed with reactions. His brother / my uncle said it was time for him to hear from me. My grandparents are pissed I did that in front of the entire extended family, with some saying I should have done that behind closed doors instead of everyone. Follow for part 2.